Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills with a mesh install for the 2019 and newer Hyundai Veloster. To get this started, the bumper needs to be removed from the car, which is fairly easy. There's a handful of fasteners under the bumper, in the wheel well, and on the upper splash guard that need to be removed. Once the bumper is off the vehicle, there's a few things to remove or loosen. To separate the styrofoam from the grille, there's a couple little metal clips. A slight top-to-bottom pinch will separate the jaws just enough to pull them off. Some pliers may also help with pinching the clip if they're too difficult to remove by hand. Once the clips are removed, then the styrofoam can be set off to the side. Next, I'll loosen the 5 screws that attaches the lower chin area to the stock grille. A regular old Phillips head screwdriver can remove these. But I cheated a little bit and got my cordless drill and removed these very quickly. After this, the tabs that are holding the lower part of the bumper on will need to be loosened as well. This needs to be done so that the lower part of the grille can be lifted out. A simple twist of a flathead screwdriver and some pulling on the black plastic is all I did. On the top of the grille, there's 4 screws holding the upper splash guard on. These are also easy to remove with a screwdriver, and it'll be best to keep these nearby as we'll need these 4 screws again later. In addition to the screws, there's also a handful of tabs that are keeping the splash guard fastened on. This time, a flathead screwdriver will make short work of the job. Just simply get the screwdriver between the 2 different parts of the tab and twist a little bit and then pull up. Repeat this for the rest of the splash guard tabs, and then the whole part should lift off. Also, set this off to the side for use later too. This now has exposed some little rivets that are holding the grille to the top of the bumper. These will need to be ground down or cut out, and to get the job done, I'll use my cordless rotary tool and equip a sanding drum. Just simply grind down the rivets until the grille and bumper separate. I found that the bumper separates a little easier when they are freshly ground down. And now for the fun part. There's a whole bunch of tabs around the grille that will need to be released. Personally, I like to grab a good variety of flathead screwdrivers for something like this. I also like to use a small hook too, to get under some of the tab areas. Having an extra person help manage some part of this task is also recommended. For most of these, we got the hook under the piece of plastic that prevents the tab from pulling back. Then, after that, with a large screwdriver, the tab usually popped out. After a little while, we got all the tabs, and then the factory grille can be removed and set off to the side. More than likely, this inner lip is going to be fairly dirty from accumulated debris. Some simple glass cleaner and a microfiber is usually all I need to get an area like this clean again. For Velosters that are not black, the colored tabs can be an eyesore, and I took my rotary tool and sanding drum to strip the paint off. It's important to note that I'm not sanding down any of the plastic, I'm just merely shaving the paint off little by little. In this close-up, it's clear that it takes multiple passes to carefully get this right. Now, let's take a look at the mesh piece that we have for sale on our website. This is pre-cut and pre-formed specifically for the 2019 and newer Veloster with all the right cuts made in all the right spots. We've taken any guesswork out of getting this mounted on the car by making some precise cuts where the factory mount tabs are. With the bent tabs facing towards the front of the bumper, our mesh piece will drop right onto the back of the bumper opening, like so. There may be a little bit of centering needed to get the mesh piece in just the right position. And once it's centered, then I'll start on the top edge and push the mesh in place. The mesh should be a tight fit, but the bumper tabs will snap over top of the mesh. I'll keep pushing these around the sides and then lastly do the bottom edge. In general, the mesh piece that we ship should be a pretty good tight fit, but if there's some spots of the mesh that could be a little closer, then this is the time to push those in. Now it's time to bond the mesh and bumper together. I like to use Plyo-Grip Plastic Repair number 3, but Automotive Goop can also work well too, as well as many other adhesives. I'm just simply applying the adhesive on the areas where the mesh and bumper make contact with each other. After that, I'll grab a small brush and even out the plyo grip across the affected areas. This step of brushing over the adhesive may not be needed if using something other than plyo grip. The lower part of the bumper will no longer have anything for the top edge to fasten to, so I'll weigh that area down with my drill for the time being. Applying the adhesive here will now bond the lower section in the proper position. There is still a portion of the stock grille that is needed for our installation. I'm going to make a cut right here with my cutoff wheel so that I can get the plastic piece that's above the stock grille. This piece is needed so that the upper splash guard can be reinstalled and to keep the structural integrity of the top of the bumper. To bond this plastic piece back on the bumper, there's a variety of plastic repair adhesives that can be used, but I'll keep using the plyo grip I used earlier. The adhesive should be applied on the raised up ribs where the part of the stock grille comes in contact with the back of the bumper. I'll also add some to the bumper where the ribs will be making contact too. Once the adhesive is on, then I'll just flip it around and line it up with the bumper, making sure that it's going right back where it came from. Immediately afterward, I'll grab some clamps and foam to hold this tightly in place while the adhesive cures. It's important that the splash guard tabs are high up enough so that it can be clipped back on properly later. For good measure, I'll add a little around the base of this plastic piece so that it's a little bit more rigid. After this cures, then the clamps and foam can be removed and set off to the side for now. And the upper splash guard can be reinstalled at this point. Just line it up and snap it back on and reuse the 4 screws that were previously taken out from the lower edge of the splash guard. And if this is the only piece that was being worked on, the bumper is ready to be put back on the car. For this specific install though, we're not stopping with just the center. I'm next going to tackle the side pieces and the brake duct areas. In order for the plastic pieces to come out, the brake duct cover will need to be removed, and for that to happen, these rivets will need to be drilled out. A simple 1/8 inch drill bit can make short work of these rivets. From there, it should detach from the side of the bumper like this. After that, a couple clips are the only thing that's holding the brake duct piece on. These can be loosened with a flathead screwdriver, similarly to the clips that were loosened on the main center grille section. Then the piece can be lifted out and set off to the side for later. Next, let's get the other black plastic cover off the bumper. There's a bunch of clips to release, and again, a flathead screwdriver is all that's needed. I'm just getting the screwdriver in behind the clip and twisting the driver so that the black plastic gets pushed back some. With the tabs loose enough, the black cover can be removed with a moderate amount of force. For me, I found that it was easiest to work these out from top to bottom. Like with the main center section, sanding off the paint on the tabs will make the install look better for lighter colored vehicles. A rotary tool and sanding drum is all that's needed for this. There's a fair bit of gunk that was built up behind where the black plastic piece was, so I'll give that a quick cleaning before moving forward. Now, here's a quick look at the side opening and brake duct mesh pieces that we have for sale. Like the main grille area, these are pre-cut and pre-bent and ready for installation right out of the box. This goes on the back of the opening with the tabs facing the front of the bumper. It's a really tight fit, and I find it easiest to install from the inner part and then work my way outward. And it might take a couple passes around the edge to get all of the tabs over the mesh. Once the mesh is in place, then I'll adjust any bend so that I'm making good contact with the mesh in the bumper. A flathead screwdriver works well for pushing in any affected areas. Then I'll grab my adhesive again and start dispensing some where the tabs of the mesh are. If using plyo grip, a brush will help spread around the epoxy and will give a more uniform application and work it in a little bit better. While that's curing, I'll start work on the brake duct pieces. These lay right on the back of the opening, and it's important to have these just barely overlapping the inner edge and centered on the opening from top to bottom. To hold the mesh in place, I'm going to grab a couple cable ties and loop them through the mesh. Afterward, I'll grab a couple wood rods and foam and feed the rods through the loop of the ties. Then I'll tighten the ties until there's enough tension to keep the mesh piece in place. Here's a quick peek at how the front looks with the rod and ties holding everything together. I then dispensed a fair amount of plyo grip on the outer edge of the mesh and just a tiny bit on the inner edge. Again, a brush can help with getting this in areas that it needs to be. On the inner edge though, I'm being extra cautious not to spill any through the front of the bumper. Once this is cured, then the cable ties can be cut off and removed along with the dowels. Now, I'll give this brake duct area a good cleaning and scuff it up a little bit with some sandpaper. The plastic piece can be put back into place with the outer edge being fed in first. After that's in place, I'll grab some foams and clamps to hold this tightly. And now I'm back to the plyo grip again. I'm trying to dispense around the outer edge so that I'm bonding it back to the bumper securely. Of all of the areas that I'm doing on this bumper, this is one where I'm not going to be skimping much on the adhesive. And again, other adhesives other than plyo grip can be used here, it's just this is the one that I like using because it cures very quickly. And just like with the other areas, a brush can be used to spread and even out the adhesive. I'll wait a little while for this to cure, and then afterwards I'll remove the clamps, and then I'm off to do the final piece of this mesh install. We've got this lower center mesh piece available that goes below the main grille area for the turbo models. At the time of making this video, the naturally aspirated version already has some mesh in the lower openings. The piece that we're selling is pre-cut and pre-bent and has cutouts for the tabs and screw mounts. Like the other pieces, this goes on the back of the opening with the bent tabs facing forward. Then I'll grab more cable ties along with the foam and wood dowels that were used earlier. The foam will help protect the finish of the bumper, while the wood dowels will give something for the cable ties to hold on to. When it's all set up, this is roughly how it should look from the front. These ties don't need to be on there super tight, just enough to hold the mesh in place just for a little while. I've got a little bit more plyo grip left, and I'll use the remaining bit that I have to adhere the mesh and bumper together. Getting this on the sides and top was no problem. The bottom edge is a little bit cumbersome though, since I couldn't get a good angle of approach. When it came time to brush it even, I got a little excess adhesive around the perimeter and tried to apply it on the lower edge with the brush. After this is cured, then I'll cut off the ties and remove the dowels and foam, and I'm finally all set with this front bumper install. Let's flip it around and see how it turned out. Oh wow, this looks awesome! Everything looks to be seamless, and after it's back on the car, it's going to look like a whole different vehicle. This is a great mod for any owner looking to transform their front end. Well, that's all I got for this video. I hope you liked it, and as usual, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And thanks for watching.